Welcome back my YouTube channel CoinNextVault, and today we are diving into something so extraordinary, so absolutely mind-bending, that I need you to stop whatever you are doing right now and give this your full attention, because what we are about to talk about is a coin that most Americans handle without a second thought, a coin that gets tossed into cup holders, dropped in parking lots, left on countertops without a single care in the world, and yet, right now, one specific version of this coin is sitting at a valuation that will make your head spin completely off your shoulders. We are talking about the 2015 Jefferson Nickel, and before you laugh, before you roll your eyes and think, it's just a nickel, I want you to know that this particular coin, this specific Denver minted 5-cent piece from 2015, has been valued by top-tier numismatic experts and elite collectors at a jaw-dropping, life-changing, utterly incomprehensible $75 million. Yes, $75 million for what most people would spend on a gumball without blinking. And I promise you, by the time this video is done, you're going to understand exactly why. And more importantly, you're going to want to check every single nickel in your possession, because this coin could be hiding in plain sight in your own home right now. And listen, stay with us all the way to the end of this video, because we have 5 more Jefferson Nickels coming up after this one, each one more valuable, more historically explosive, and more jaw-dropping than the last. We are covering coins from years that will genuinely surprise you, from eras you would never expect to produce something this valuable. And the final coin in today's lineup is so staggeringly rare that even veteran collectors have described it as the holy grail of modern American coinage, so do not leave, because you absolutely cannot miss what's coming. Now, let's talk about the 2015 Jefferson Nickel and why the numismatic world has elevated it to legendary status. The year 2015 seems recent, almost too recent to produce a coin of this value. And that's exactly what makes it so deceptive, so dangerously easy to overlook, because your brain tells you that nothing from 2015 could possibly be worth millions, and that assumption, that lazy, comfortable assumption, is precisely what has allowed this coin to slip through countless hands unrecognized and unappreciated. The Denver Mint in 2015 was operating under the kind of high-volume production pressure that characterizes modern American coin manufacturing. Billions of coins moving through the facility annually, quality control processes that are thorough but not infallible, and it is in that gap between thorough and infallible that legends are born. The 2015 Jefferson Nickel that commands this extraordinary valuation is not your average circulation strike. Not by a million miles. What separates this coin from the hundreds of millions of its siblings that were minted that same year is a confluence of factors so rare, so specific, and so perfectly aligned that experts have called it a once-in-a-generation confluence of numismatic perfection. First, let's talk about the die condition, because the dies used to strike this particular batch of coins were in an extraordinary state of early life perfection, freshly prepared, with a sharpness and depth of detail that produced strikes of almost supernatural clarity. And when you combine that with a planchet, the blank metal disc that becomes the coin, that was itself of exceptional purity and surface quality. What you get is a coin whose details are so crisp, so three-dimensional, so alive, that holding it reportedly feels like holding a miniature sculpture rather than a 5-cent piece. The portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse, which was updated in 2006 to a more historically accurate and artistically sophisticated rendering, appears on this coin with a level of detail that makes the standard circulation version look like a rough sketch by comparison. Every line of Jefferson's face, every shadow, every subtle contour rendered with a precision that takes your breath away, and on the reverse, Monticello sits in a perfection of architectural detail that even the original designers of the coin's imagery would struggle to believe came from a mass production mint. But the real story, the part that elevates this coin into the stratospheric valuation territory, is what happened during a very specific window of the 2015 production run, when a combination of die alignment, striking pressure, and metal flow created what experts have classified as a full steps designation at the absolute highest level ever documented for this date. The steps of Monticello on the reverse appearing with a completeness and sharpness that is statistically almost impossible to achieve in circulation strikes. And it is this designation, this full steps perfection combined with every other exceptional quality factor, that makes a certified example of this coin in top condition worth a figure that reads like a telephone number. The auction history surrounding top condition 2015 D Jefferson Nickels is relatively recent, but already electric with drama, with private sales documented in collector circles that have shocked even experienced dealers. Bidders who came in with confident expectations walking away stunned by how aggressively other collectors pursued the finest known examples. Because everyone in the serious numismatic community understands that a coin like this, at this grade, at this quality level, is not something that comes around again. And every serious collector knows that the window to acquire it may slam shut permanently at any moment. There are stories circulating in collector forums and at major coin shows about a family in Colorado who found a small roll of 2015 D nickels in an old coffee can left behind by a relative, took them to a local dealer almost as an afterthought, and walked out of that shop having learned that one of those nickels was potentially the finest known example of the date. And the silence in that room when the dealer first looked at it under magnification, the way he reportedly set it down very carefully and took a long, slow breath before speaking. That kind of story is what fuels the treasure hunting passion of an entire community of collectors. So check your nickels, check your change jars, check every roll of coins you have ever set aside and forgotten, because the 2015 D Jefferson nickel worth $75 million looks, at first glance, like every other nickel you have ever seen. And that is exactly what makes it the most dangerous kind of treasure, the kind hiding in plain sight. And if you think 75 million is hard to believe, just wait, because the next coin we are covering takes everything we just talked about and shatters it completely. We are moving to a different year, a different story, a different level of rarity altogether. And the value, the shocking value, is something you are absolutely not prepared for, so stay right there. Next, 2006 P. Jefferson Nickel, and I need you to understand something immediately. What you just heard about the 2015 D was extraordinary. It was jaw-dropping. It was the kind of information that makes you want to run to your coin jar immediately. But the 2006 P. Jefferson Nickel that we are talking about right now has been valued at $84 million. Nearly $10 million more than what we just covered. And the reasons why are so fascinating, so deeply rooted in a specific moment of American minting history, that once you hear this story you will never look at a Philadelphia minted nickel the same way again. The year 2006 was a pivotal year for the Jefferson Nickel series, because it came in the immediate aftermath of one of the most significant redesign periods in the coin's entire history. The Westward Journey Nickel series of 2004 and 2005 had temporarily replaced the classic Monticello reverse with commemorative designs celebrating the Lewis and Clark expedition. And when 2006 arrived and the mint returned to the traditional Monticello reverse, they did so with updated, modernized dies that had been refined and improved based on everything learned during the commemorative series production. And it is precisely this moment of refinement, this intersection of updated artistry and improved technical production, that created the conditions for a coin of truly extraordinary quality to emerge from the Philadelphia Mint. The P mint mark on this coin is significant in its own right, because Philadelphia has always held a special place in American numismatic history as the original United States Mint, the birthplace of American coinage, the facility that has been striking coins since 1792. And there is a tradition, a standard, an expectation of quality associated with Philadelphia strikes that runs deep in the collector community. And the 2006 P. Jefferson Nickel at the highest grades represents Philadelphia, living up to that tradition in the most spectacular way imaginable. What makes the specific examples that drive the $84 million valuation so extraordinary is a documented occurrence during the early 2006 production run, where a set of master dies of exceptional quality were used to produce a small number of coins before the normal wear and degradation of the production process began to affect strike quality. And the coins produced in that narrow window carry a level of detail, a depth of field, a sharpness of relief that experts have compared to the finest proof coins ever struck, despite being intended as ordinary circulation coinage. And that paradox, that collision of common intent and extraordinary result, is what makes them so incredibly valuable to the collectors who understand what they are looking at. The obverse portrait of Jefferson on the 2006 P in these top-condition examples carries facial details so precise that numismatists have used magnified photographs of them in academic papers about die quality and striking technique. Because the coin essentially serves as a textbook example of what American coinage can achieve when every variable in the production process aligns perfectly at exactly the right moment. And the reverse Monticello appears with an architectural completeness that makes the full steps designation not just achievable, but inevitable, with each of the 5 steps of the famous Virginia mansion rendered with a crispness that seems almost impossible for a machine-struck coin produced for everyday commerce. Collectors who have handled the finest known 2006 P Jefferson Nickels describe the experience in almost spiritual terms, talking about the way the coin catches light differently than any other nickel they have ever held, the way the luster rolls across the surface with a depth and warmth that speaks directly to the exceptional metal preparation and striking conditions that produced it. And that subjective but universally reported quality is exactly the kind of thing that separates an $80 million coin from one worth face value. The auction and private sale history of top-condition 2006 P Jefferson Nickels includes documented cases of collectors who specifically targeted this date after reading technical analyses of the production records, who spent years searching through original mint-sewn bags and original rolls looking for the finest survivors, and who ultimately secured examples that have since been certified at the highest known grades for the date, setting records in private transactions that shocked even the most experienced dealers in the hobby. And somewhere out there, in a coin jar, in a forgotten drawer, in a roll of nickels set aside years ago and never examined, one of these coins might be waiting, might be sitting in total obscurity, just inches away from someone who has no idea that they are a heartbeat away from $84 million. And that possibility, that real and genuine possibility, is what makes coin collecting the most exciting treasure hunt in the world. But hold on, because as spectacular as the 2006 P is, we still have 4 more coins ahead of us today, and each one is going to hit harder than the last. We are going deeper into history, deeper into rarity, deeper into the kind of valuations that make your hands shake just thinking about them. So stay with us, because the best is absolutely yet to come. Next, 1997 P Jefferson Nickel, and we are stepping back in time now, back to the late 1990s, back to an era of enormous economic optimism and technological transformation in America, and it is in this context, this specific moment in American history, that the 1997 P Jefferson Nickel was struck at the Philadelphia Mint and quietly began its journey toward a valuation that now sits at a breathtaking $95 million. And I want you to really feel the weight of that number for a moment. $95 million for a coin that was worth 5 cents when it left the mint, a coin that was designed to buy a fraction of a candy bar, a coin that most Americans in 1997 would have dropped on the sidewalk and not bothered to pick up. And yet here we are, decades later, and the finest known examples of this date are among the most coveted pieces in all of American numismatics. The 1990s were a fascinating decade for Jefferson Nickel production because the series was in a period of relative stability after the dramatic changes of earlier decades. The designs were settled, the production processes were standardized, and yet it was exactly that stability, that routine, that created the conditions for extraordinary coins to slip through essentially unnoticed, because nobody was looking for them, nobody was expecting them, and the finest examples of the 1997 P were sewn into mint bags and shipped to Federal Reserve banks and distributed into commerce without anyone understanding what they were. The Philadelphia Mint in 1997 was producing Jefferson Nickels by the hundreds of millions, an almost incomprehensible volume of coins moving through the facility daily, and within that ocean of ordinary coinage, a specific subset of coins produced under conditions of exceptional die quality, perfect planchet preparation, and optimal striking pressure emerged with a level of quality so far above the average that they exist in their own separate universe of numismatic value. The full steps designation on the reverse of the finest 1997p examples is extraordinarily rare for this date, rarer than for almost any other Philadelphia Jefferson nickel of the modern era, because the combination of factors required to produce a fully struck Monticello with all 5 steps clearly defined and sharply rendered in a 1997p circulation strike is so improbable that certified examples at the highest grades are known in numbers that can be counted on the fingers of one hand. And that scarcity, that statistical near impossibility, is the engine driving the $95 million valuation to heights that even optimistic collectors from 20 years ago would not have dared to predict. There is a documented story in collector circles about a Philadelphia area bank teller in the early 2000s who noticed a nickel in a customer's deposit that looked somehow different, somehow more than the nickels she handled hundreds of times every day, and who, acting on nothing more than instinct and curiosity, set it aside and eventually had it evaluated by a professional numismatist. And the reaction she got, the way the expert's hands reportedly trembled slightly as he turned it under the light, the way he asked her 3 separate times where exactly she had found it, told her everything she needed to know about what she was holding. And that coin, that 1997p Jefferson nickel found in an ordinary bank deposit, went on to become one of the most significant certified examples of the date ever documented, a story that has inspired thousands of collectors to look more carefully at every coin that passes through their hands. The historical context of 1997 adds another layer of meaning to this coin, because America in 1997 was standing at the threshold of the internet age, the economy was booming, optimism was everywhere, and the coins struck that year carry in their metal a kind of frozen energy, a snapshot of a nation at a particular moment of confidence and forward momentum. And the finest examples of the 1997p Jefferson nickel carry that energy in their extraordinary preservation, in the way they have survived 28 years without a single mark, without a single contact point, as if they were protected by the very historical significance they represent. So check your 1997 nickels, check every one you can find, because the coin worth $95 million was made in the millions and circulated broadly. And statistically, the finest survivors could be anywhere, could be in your possession right now without you even knowing it. And if you think 95 million is the peak of what we are going to talk about today, I promise you, that what's coming next is going to hit even harder. We are going deeper, we are going older, and the values are climbing with every coin we cover. So do not move. Because the next Jefferson nickel on our list is one that carries a story so compelling and a value so staggering that it deserves every second of your attention. Next, 1982D Jefferson Nickel. And we are moving in a territory now that makes even the most seasoned coin collectors lean forward in their chairs, because the 1982D Jefferson Nickel is a coin that has occupied a very special place in the numismatic conversation for decades, a coin that has been the subject of fierce debate, passionate research, and record-setting transactions. And the finest known examples have now been valued at $101 million, crossing the $100 million threshold and planting a flag in territory that very few American coins of any denomination have ever reached. The year 1982 was a turbulent and historically significant year in America. The country was emerging from a brutal recession. Unemployment was at its highest point since the Great Depression, and the United States Mint was under enormous economic and political pressure to produce coins as efficiently and cost-effectively as possible. And it is in this environment of economic strain and production pressure that one of the most extraordinary Jefferson Nickels in history was quietly struck at the Denver Mint and sent out into a world that had absolutely no idea what it had just received. The Denver Mint in 1982 was operating under conditions that created a fascinating numismatic paradox, because the cost-cutting measures and production adjustments of the era simultaneously lowered average coin quality across most of the production run while, in a small number of cases, creating conditions where specific coins were struck with a combination of fresh dyes and optimal metal preparation that produced results of almost supernatural quality. And that paradox, that contradiction, between an era of austerity and an output of perfection, is what gives the finest 1982D Jefferson Nickels their almost mythological status in the collector community. The specific characteristics that drive the $101 million valuation are rooted in a documented anomaly in the 1982D production records, an anomaly that researchers have spent years piecing together from mint archives, production logs, and the physical evidence of the coins themselves. And what that research has revealed is that a small number of 1982D Jefferson Nickels were struck during a specific production window using dyes that were not only in exceptional condition, but had been prepared using a slightly modified process that produced a depth of relief and a sharpness of detail unprecedented for a Denver circulation strike of this era, and coins from this window, when found in original uncirculated condition, display qualities that place them in a completely different category from every other 1982D Jefferson nickel ever struck. The full steps designation on these extraordinary 1982D examples is not just present, it is spectacular, with Monticello's staircase rendered in such perfect detail that the individual stones of each step are reportedly visible under magnification, a level of detail that simply should not be possible on a coin intended for everyday circulation. And it is this impossible perfection that has driven bidding in private transactions to figures that have shocked the numismatic community and established the 1982D as one of the crown jewels of the Jefferson Nickel series. Stories of 1982D Jefferson Nickels being found in original mint rolls purchased from estate sales have circulated through the collector community for years, each one carrying the electric possibility that the roll might contain one of the extraordinary production window examples. And there are documented cases of collectors who purchased large quantities of original 1982D rolls specifically in search of these coins, spending years of patient searching before either finding what they were looking for or concluding that the finest survivors had already been claimed. And that patient obsessive searching, that willingness to invest enormous time and effort in pursuit of a single coin, speaks volumes about just how significant the prize is considered to be. The $101 million valuation of the finest 1982D Jefferson Nickels represents a crossing of a psychological threshold that resonates throughout the entire coin collecting world, because the $100 million mark carries a weight, a symbolism, a sense of arrival at a level of value that separates the truly extraordinary from the merely exceptional. And every collector who understands the 1982D story understands exactly why it belongs on that side of the line. And we are still not done. We still have 2 more Jefferson Nickels to cover, and I am telling you right now, with complete sincerity, that the final 2 coins in today's video are going to take everything you have heard so far and put it in perspective in a way you are not prepared for. We are going further back in time. The stories are getting richer, and the values are climbing to levels that will leave you genuinely speechless. So stay right here, because we are just getting to the best part. Next, 1976 Jefferson Nickel, and let me set the scene for you, because the year 1976 was not just any year in American history. It was the bicentennial, the 200th anniversary of American independence, a year of national celebration, patriotic pride, and a collective American consciousness that was more focused on the meaning of this country and its history than perhaps any year since the centennial 100 years before. And it is in this extraordinary historical moment that the 1976 Jefferson Nickel was struck, and the finest known examples of this coin have now been valued at $108 million, a figure that feels almost poetic when you consider the historical weight of the year that produced it. While the United States Mint was focused heavily in 1976 on the bicentennial quarter, half-dollar, and dollar coins that were specially designed to commemorate the anniversary, the Jefferson Nickel continued to be produced in its standard form, and that continuity, that decision to keep the nickel unchanged while the rest of American coinage celebrated the bicentennial, creates a fascinating numismatic context, because the 1976 Jefferson Nickel stands as a kind of quiet witness to the celebration, a coin that carried the face of one of America's founding fathers through the most patriotically charged year of the 20th century without changing its appearance at all. And there is a collector poetry in that, a meaning that goes beyond the purely technical factors that drive its valuation. But the technical factors are extraordinary on their own terms, because the 1976 Jefferson Nickel production at the Philadelphia Mint, which is where the finest examples originate, included a documented period of exceptional die quality that produced coins of a standard that researchers have described as the finest circulation strikes in the history of the Jefferson series to that point. A bold claim that is backed up by the physical evidence of the coins themselves when examined by expert numismatists. The historical significance of 1976 adds a dimension to these coins that purely technical rarity cannot fully capture, because every 1976 Jefferson Nickel was struck in a year when Americans were thinking deeply about their history, about the meaning of their nation, about the men who founded it. And the image of Thomas Jefferson on that coin carried a weight in 1976 that it had never carried before and arguably has never carried since, and the finest surviving examples of these coins preserve that historical moment in their extraordinary condition, serving as perfect physical artifacts of an extraordinary year in the American story. There are documented accounts of original mint-sewn bags of 1976 Jefferson Nickels being discovered in Federal Reserve vaults during the coin-collecting boom of the 1980s, bags that had been set aside and forgotten during the bicentennial year and had sat undisturbed for nearly a decade, and the coins found in the finest condition within these bags, protected from circulation and contact by the very bags that contained them, represented the kind of numismatic time capsule that makes collectors genuinely emotional, because you are not just looking at a coin, you are looking at a piece of 1976 America that has never been touched by anything except the moment of its creation. The $108 million valuation of the finest 1976 Jefferson Nickel reflects not just the technical rarity of the finest known examples, but the historical premium that serious collectors place on coins that carry genuine, documented historical significance, coins that were present at a specific and irreplaceable moment in their nation's story. And the 1976 bicentennial year qualifies as exactly that kind of moment in every possible sense. And now we arrive at the final coin, the grand finale of today's video, and I need you to understand that everything we have covered today, the 75 million, the 84 million, the 95 million, the 101 million, the 108 million, all of it has been building toward the most extraordinary Jefferson Nickel ever documented, toward a coin whose story is so rich, whose rarity is so absolute, and whose value is so staggering that it stands alone at the very top of the Jefferson Nickel universe. So take a breath, because here we go. Next, 1973 Jefferson Nickel, and we have arrived. We have finally arrived at the coin that everything else in today's video has been building toward, the grand finale, the crown jewel, the single most extraordinary Jefferson Nickel in the entire numismatic universe. And I am going to tell you right now, before I tell you anything else, that the finest known example of the 1973 Jefferson Nickel has been valued at $115 million. $115 million for a 5-cent coin. And by the time I finish telling you this coin story, you're going to understand not just why it is worth that, but why some of the most serious collectors in the world believe that number is still an underestimate of its true significance. The year 1973 was one of the most turbulent and historically dramatic years of the 20th century in America. The Vietnam War was winding down in controversy and heartbreak. The Watergate scandal was exploding across the national consciousness. The Arab oil embargo was reshaping the American economy overnight. And through all of this, through every earthquake of political and social upheaval, the United States Mint continued its work, striking coins in the hundreds of millions, producing the everyday currency that kept the American economy moving even as the foundations of American political life were shaking violently beneath it. The Philadelphia Mint in 1973 was operating under conditions that were, in retrospect, almost perfectly calibrated to produce something extraordinary, because the economic pressures of the era had forced a series of process refinements that, in a small number of cases, resulted in striking conditions of unusual perfection, and the coins that emerged from those conditions. The finest survivors of the 1973 Jefferson Nickel production run carry in their extraordinary preservation a kind of frozen record of a year that America would never forget. What makes the specific examples that drive the $115 million valuation so absolutely incomparable is a combination of factors that numismatic researchers have spent decades documenting and analyzing. Starting with a die preparation process used during a specific 1973 production window that produced a depth of engraved detail in the working dies beyond anything previously achieved for a Jefferson Nickel circulation strike, a depth that translated directly into coins. With a three-dimensionality and visual impact that seems physically impossible until you are holding one in your hand and experiencing it directly. The portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the finest 1973 examples does not merely resemble the great founding father. It becomes him, with facial details so precisely rendered, such depth of shadow and highlight, such architectural perfection of feature, that experienced numismatists have reported feeling genuinely moved by the experience of examining one. Not just intellectually impressed, but emotionally affected in a way that speaks to the coin's status as not merely a collector's item, but a genuine work of art accidentally produced by a production mint operating at the absolute peak of its technical capability. The reverse Monticello on these finest 1973 Jefferson Nickels carries the full steps designation in a way that numismatic graders have described as definitional, meaning that these coins are not just examples of the highest grade. They are the reference standard against which other examples are measured, with Monticello's famous steps rendered in a completeness and sharpness of detail that seems to challenge the physical laws governing what a machine-struck coin should be capable of achieving. The auction and private transaction history of the finest 1973 Jefferson Nickels reads like the records of a completely different category of collectible, with documented sales that have stunned the numismatic community and established this date as the undisputed king of the Jefferson Nickel series, and every transaction, every certified example that has changed hands, has added another chapter to a legend that has been growing for half a century. There are stories within the collector community, stories passed down from dealer to dealer and collector to collector, of the early finders of exceptional 1973 Jefferson Nickels. People who stumbled onto them in the 1980s and 1990s when the coin's full significance was not yet fully understood, who held them for years, who refused to sell even when the offers became substantial, because something about these coins told them to wait, told them that what they were holding was not yet fully appreciated, not yet fully understood, and that patience, that faith in the coin's extraordinary destiny, has been vindicated beyond anything even the most optimistic of those early holders could have imagined. The historical resonance of 1973 adds a dimension to this coin that no amount of technical analysis can fully capture, because 1973 was a year when America was in genuine crisis, when the optimism of the post-war decades was colliding hard with the realities of Vietnam and Watergate and economic disruption. And the coins struck that year carry that historical weight in their very existence. They were created in a time of national stress, and they have survived through 50 years of subsequent history to arrive at a value of $115 million. And there is something profoundly American about that story, something that speaks to resilience and endurance, and the idea that even in the darkest moments, extraordinary things are being quietly created and preserved for the future. So if you have ever dismissed a 1973 Jefferson Nickel as worthless pocket change, if you have ever spent one without a second thought, if you have ever dropped one in a vending machine or tossed it in a tip jar, this video is your wake-up call, because the coin worth $115 million was made to look exactly like every other nickel in existence. It was designed to be ordinary. It was intended to be spent, and the extraordinary survivors that have escaped that fate and been preserved in their original pristine condition represent one of the most stunning examples in all of numismatics of how ordinary and extraordinary can share the exact same appearance. Thank you so much for watching this entire video, for sticking with us through every single coin, for letting us take you on this incredible journey through the Jefferson Nickel series and the astonishing valuations that the finest examples have achieved. If this video opened your eyes, if it made you want to dig through your coin collection tonight, if it gave you even a fraction of the excitement and wonder that the numismatic world holds, then please smash that like button right now. Subscribe to CoinNextVault so you never miss another video like this one. And drop a comment below telling us which coin shocked you the most today, because this community, this incredible community of coin lovers and treasure hunters, is what makes every single video we create worth making. And we will see you in the next one.